feel free to do that in chat. That's one of the things we've liked about these calls, that they're somewhat informal. So we encourage that. All right, Terrence, I've got 3 o'clock if you want to go ahead and get started, and we'll add people as they're coming in.
Well, good. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 1,000 10 at the top chat. No, we hadn't had that many. We've had a few. And I know a lot of you guys have been on the ones. I see some familiar faces and I see some new ones. I have my co-mayor and Travelers Rest that I see, and I'm glad to welcome everybody who's new to us. Again, when we started talking about this right on the front end of the COVID-19 situation, Dean and I were just trying to figure out how to stay connected as an organization and just to be able to cover the 10-county region. We've had a very busy week. We had a Greenwood chat Tuesday, Dean? Wednesday?
Yesterday, Wednesday, they all run together.
And heard some great information of some great things that they're doing in Greenwood. And we actually had a officers meeting yesterday and talked about some of the things that we continue to try to push as an organization. So again, welcome. And before we get started into the presentation, I'm going to turn it back over to Dean because he's got a couple of questions that he wants to pose to the group. Dean?
Oh, well, thank you, Terrence. And yes, we thought we'd do something a little bit different. You know, Zoom has a lot of neat features, and one thing we have not done in this is ask for your feedback on some questions. We've started doing that in the county workshops, the virtual listening tour. But have 2 questions we're going to start with, and then we'll ask a couple more later. If you would go ahead and answer these. The first one is, what is you or your company's plan for returning to pre-COVID-19 work arrangements? And you can see the answers there. I won't repeat them all. And then the second one, very simple. Have you eaten at a restaurant since the reopening for dining? We just want to get a sense of kind of, are people going out and doing things, and what's your plans in terms of your offices and your strategy for going back. So we'll give a minute or two. We're getting almost everybody are responding, so this is going good, and everybody can feel free to participate. (24 of 27), so there's 2 more folks. So we'll give another 10 seconds or so, and then let's kind of see where we are. All right, going once, going twice, and we'll end the polling. So the first question, what is you or your company's plan for returning? 44%, number 1, is already back to regular pre-COVID-19 schedule. So that is very good. Probably higher than I would have expected. Second there is back on staggered or partial schedule, and then not back yet, but returning soon. So, you know, that's basically 92% are in that realm, Terrence, which I think is good. Probably not that big a surprise. Not back and plan on waiting is only 8%, so 2 folks. So there is a little bit of that. You know, you kind of hear anecdotally, I think if we'd asked this question 3 or 4 weeks ago, we would have gotten a higher percentage there, but I think folks are itching to get back to at least some level of normalcy. And of course, things have been returned by the governor and such to allow for that. The second one is, have you eaten at a restaurant since they reopened for dining? And 68% have. So that is great. I know our Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development folks on the call will be happy for that, and hopefully they're all in their communities are doing that. But it great response. So with that, Terrence, and we'll touch. And I've got a couple more questions to ask later, but appreciate your feedback on this, and I will turn it back over now, Terrence, to you.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for everybody participating in it. I like to eat, so I answered yes to going back out to eat, so that's always a good thing. I want to just introduce our speaker. At the moment, the next speaker, the voice you hear will be that of George Patrick, better known as G.P. McClear Jr. And G.P. is the mayor of Fountain Inn. He's also the executive director of the South Carolina Arts Alliance. And GP was obviously, you will see that he's young, he's talented, he's a good-looking guy. He will be one of ours. He's only 31 years old, if I understand it right, and he will be he will be very good for the upstate in his role. I appreciate his service to his community. I know that is when you have a full-time job and a part-time job that turns into a full-time job sometimes, that can be a challenge, but public service is what this is all about. He's going to talk a little bit about, you know, his organization and how it affects arts. He's had a varied background in that particular area of the upstate in Greenville County, and I'll let him talk about that. Obviously, hopefully he'll tell us about his family, but without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to George Patrick G.P. McClear.
Thanks, Terrence.
George, thank you.
Thanks, Terrence and Dean and everybody. If I look a little tired, sorry, I was on a trash truck this morning. So and I did not get a lot of sleep last night. So I tried to take a 20-minute nap before this started. It didn't go so well. So my name is G.P. McClear. I'm the executive director of the South Carolina Arts Alliance, and I'm also the mayor of Fountain Inn. I was elected in November. Today, though, I'm kind of wearing the South Carolina Arts Alliance hat. Me and my wife, obviously, we live in Fountain Inn. We live on the Lawrence County side of Fountain Inn. We are also expecting our first child, a daughter, in October. So COVID has been, well, we've had time to paint the nursery. That's we have been able to get a lot of that done. But for the arts sector, COVID has hit us pretty hard. You are hard pressed to find an arts venue open. To the questions that you all responded to earlier in the poll, odds are almost all of our arts organizations are not back to normal operations and probably won't be for quite a while. So I think, Justine, I think we can go ahead and go to the next one. So first, I kind of want to give some of y'all a little bit of a understanding of the breadth of our industry across the state. So the South Carolina Arts Alliance is a statewide nonprofit. We're 41 years old, and we do all of the advocacy for the arts at the state and federal level, and we also do leadership development across the sector and across the state. So my job is all over the state of South Carolina, and we have about 2,000 members of individuals or organizations scattered around the state. I see a couple of them on the call. Hi, Ava. So we've got a pretty long history of doing this, but obviously we've never seen anything like COVID in our history. The arts are about 115,000 jobs just in this state alone in the creative sector. We have a $9.7 billion economic impact to our state's economy. That's just the state. At the federal level, our economic impact, as measured by the Bureau of Economic Analysis, is well over $800 billion, and which is about 5% of the U.S. in the entire U.S.'s GDP. And we have 5 million jobs across the U.S. We cover a broad range of 4 nonprofit educational institutions, as well as obviously all of the visual and performing arts. This also includes, though, people that maybe you don't really think of when you hear the South Carolina Arts Alliance. You probably think of folks here in the upstate like Anderson Arts Center or Chapman Cultural Center or the Peace Center or Warehouse Theater, or even maybe the Owings or the Owings Playhouse. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But this also includes a lot of creative entrepreneurs, designers, and independent contractors who do a lot of maybe your wedding invitation designs, or who are freelance musicians who are playing in your bars on the weeknights and weekends, and also a lot of your festivals that are economic engines for our industry. We are a big piece of our state's economy and of all of our local economies. And so the interesting kind of the paradox that, well, actually, I think that's in my slide later. So I'm jumping ahead. I guess we'll go to the next slide. I'll follow my own directions here. We were pretty much the first to close for COVID-19, I would argue, since once the moment that became clear that COVID-19 was a threat, large gatherings ceased to happen. Everything from Spoleto Festival to Artisphere got canceled. Art Fields in Lake City canceled. The Peace Center season for the rest of this current season pretty much canceled or postponed. You saw every single arts event go away. We are a major tourism draw. So not only for large gatherings was that a problem, but also tourism bringing people in from other parts of the country for some of our larger festivals is a concern. So that was another factor, as well as the nature of our work requires our practitioners to be in close contact with each other. You can't really put on an effective production while having face shields on to have the same impact and the same effect. So we were essentially the first industry to close, and kind of spoiler alert, we may be one of the last ones to fully open. The next slide. You can go to the next slide, Justine, sorry. All right, so I kind of went through this a little bit of who closed. These are just a short snapshot of everyone that had closed, and then what's been the impact so far. So we have had on the US and this is only reported, it's a survey done by Americans for the Arts. A lot of these numbers are gonna be pretty much for the nonprofit art sector. This does not necessarily include every single thing that's happened. So in the US, based on the survey, about $5.5 billion in loss for the industry, about $30,000 for every organization. And in South Carolina, reported so far about 12 million. That does not include some of the heaviest hitters, I believe, like Spoleto or the Peace Center. I don't think they input anything into this survey. In South Carolina alone, that's about 1 million attendees that did not fill seats. And 95% of all respondents had to cancel some sort of event. Additionally, there's a survey from the Artist Relief Fund and Americans for the Arts that shows that 95% of all artists have shown a loss in income. A lot of them are not working right now. We've got in the upstate, we've got a really great burgeoning and existing and also continuing to grow music scene. Well, all of those people have had no job since March. You've seen them streaming online, but people aren't paying for that. You've seen them trying to create digital products, but essentially every performing artist hasn't had a gig since mid-March, and all indicators say that it may not be for a while that gets back to normal. We'll go to the next slide. What we've been doing for the South Carolina Arts Alliance, so we handle all of the advocacy at the state and federal level. So the first wave of all of this was, we've been busier than ever. And I just left a federal Zoom early to come to this one. We spent the better part of the first month, I would say, translating federal policy to our arts organizations. So the things about the PPP loans and the unemployment expansions, all of those things were never really accessible to our field before, to a large majority of our field, I guess I should say. Smaller organizations that have less than 4 employees that were not required to pay into unemployment. Individual artists not required to pay into unemployment. Nonprofits in general were not eligible for SBA disaster loans before this. So we had a lot of educating to do to our field to translate, here's what this means, here's what it's going to require, and seeking answers from federal agencies and representatives on that. And then obviously sharing that across the board. We've also created a pretty good website for resources surrounding COVID-19. It's got links to all of the federal policy, some other resources, and it's pretty robust. And then we've also been, after kind of federal stuff sort of was done, or at least done for the moment, we had to turn our attention to how do we give some of these organizations, how do we deepen their skills to navigate this crisis? So we've been hosting webinars through a series we've called Beyond COVID. We had 2 webinars on financial management during this time, of how to scenario plan your budgets, how to have just sort of the make sure you have the baseline financial statements that you understand them. And then we also have done 2 other webinars on marketing in this time. We were able to partner with Ingenious, based in Greenville. They created content for us specifically for arts organizations of how to market during this time, and it was very well attended from folks across the state. And then we've been trying to work on one for fundraising, but we haven't gotten that one solidified yet. Additionally, we have been in contact with Accelerate SC on the reopening of South Carolina. We tried to be on that committee. We had our request forwarded to the governor's office. You guys know who's on Accelerate SC. It was not us. But we do have some good friends on that committee, and we've been in constant contact with them on work that we're doing and our concerns for our industry. Because, like I said, odds are we're going to be the last ones to open. There's a picture floating around Facebook. I don't know if people have seen it. I think it's Berlin Opera. They removed theater seats out of their theater. And so you see 2 seats, space of like 3 seats, and then 1 single seat. They created different seating configurations to see what it would look like. And it did not look like, if you were walking the Peace Center like that, you would feel very weird. But that's going to be the reality for us, most likely. Not just because of what people want to do. People want to be open, but the public's willingness to gather in an enclosed space for a long period of time. So we have some unique concerns for the reopening of South Carolina and for our industry specifically, and we have requested specific guidance on that. When we weren't getting as much specific guidance as we were hoping for, we went ahead and created what the picture you see there, the Arts Reopening Guide for South Carolina arts venues and organizations. The guide that we created is not a list of how to change your theater production or how to change your choral concert. It's more of a list of guiding questions to help that you should answer before you reopen. Asking things like, are you going to monitor the temperatures of people entering your building? What's your work at home policy going to be? And looking at financials. So it's kind of a long list broken up by components of operations that people should consider before reopening, specific to the arts industry. Additionally, we've been in contact with Accelerate Ed, the group focusing on reopening schools in the fall. And their attention right now is still sort of focused on summer learning. But as they turn to the fall, we have been in touch with them about helping being a clearinghouse for some of the concerns surrounding arts education. You've seen what Greenville County proposed, most likely. The comment sections are very interesting to read, as always, on whatever they do. But there are none of those concerns yet echo what we're worried about, which is the loss of standing for arts education in the classroom if you have to fully implement social distancing in every single course. You can't teach theater with only, by virtually to the degree that you really want to. You can't do choral, you can't do one-on-one choral coaching or violin lessons effectively or with a group you're going to have to spread them out and you're going to have to reduce your class size. So we've got concerns over that, and we want to also help create a model that we know we're going to have to give a little or a lot, especially for the first semester, if not the whole year. But making sure that arts education is still valued. It's in the profile of the South Carolina graduate. We were 1 week away from a meeting, making sure that it had bigger presence in the school report cards, and then COVID hit. So we're in contact with them to help the Department of Education sift through those concerns, because they have them as well. And then, like I said, we developed the Arts Reopening Guide and sent that out just this week. We also sent it to Accelerate Ed ahead of time, and it was sent up the flagpole to their committee chair and sent to the appropriate group. We allowed them to have some time to look at it in case there were any really big red flags for them. So the next slide. So yeah, like this is what I said. This is the big paradox we have. We are the first to close. We'll probably be the last to open. There are some groups in this state that are scenario planning, not having shows until January, until there's a vaccine. And some of my colleagues are across the country. We've been having weekly meetings, and there are some major cities that are mandating no large gatherings, essentially Coliseum shows, let's say, until fall of 2021. So this is going to hit our industry extremely hard. It has already, and it's going to continue. So we're going to be probably the last to open due to the nature of the product that we rely on and our operational model. It's just the way our business runs it is reliant on large gatherings, single large gatherings, most of the time. Museums have a little bit of wiggle room on those, but they won't have any interactive exhibits. Those will be limited. Artist talks are going to be limited. School field trips are going to be limited or eliminated. So we've got a lot of things on our list to open fully. However, the paradox is we are also one of the most useful tools for communities to get their main streets back alive. Think about what you miss most about this time of year in the downtown of your favorite city, small or large, and it's probably centered around a festival, a First Friday art walk, a summer concert series, or a restaurant week, or some sort of event that most likely includes either culinary arts, musicians, visual artists. So the summertime for small towns across the state are heavily reliant on the arts as a tool for economic development. So while, yes, we have to be cautious about opening the right way and understanding the nature of our industry, we also are extremely useful if a community is ready to open up. We are a great tool to do that by. So that's sort of the paradox that we have. And that's kind of the case we are also taking to the state legislature for support for our industry. I think that's kind of the biggest, this paradox thing has been on my mind a lot lately. I don't know if I have another slide or not, Justine. I don't. So scartsalliance.net for all of our stuff. Yeah, you can go there, and I'm happy to take questions or talk more about something if someone just finded something interesting.
Thank you. Great information. I think Dean just sent out a note on chat if you have some questions. I don't know if anything's there yet. I think I'll open it up for the first question, and hopefully we've got a few minutes for a couple more. I get more and more concerned about, and I think in one of your slide pictures we have Carolina Rand Park, and we do a lot of productions down there, university. So best practice or ideas on how do you, if you have people come into a space where there's no entry point, how do you, you can't check, temperature checks all over the entry points. Have you thought about that scenario?
Yeah. One of the questions we have for people in the reopening guide is, what is your ingress and egress access? And how is it controlled? Can you control it? One of the things we're doing though for Fountain Inn, I can use a local example. We have our Sounds of Summer series coming up starting this summer with a summer concert series. One of the ways we are we kind of found to help with at least the social distancing piece, which is to encourage everybody to bring a blanket, and that becomes your zone. Like you have to, if you want to be on the grass, you bring a blanket, so that automatically creates a buffer for you and your family unit. That's a visible way, that's non-intrusive, that is easy to monitor, and police is maybe too strong of a word, but and we have also restricted to where we would like seating to occur. It has a road. Our little amphitheater has a road behind it, Depot Street, and that becomes, on busy concerts, it's full of people standing. We want to make sure that is clear for people to be able to walk without having to walk through a crowd. Making sure that we have hand sanitizing stations on the way, kind of the two biggest, maybe three areas that people walk in. Additionally, what we've done is sometimes we've had, for some of our events, the city has had a beer truck on site or maybe a food truck. We have, at least for this first part, put all of that onto the local businesses who are nearby, so that they're able to better control. They just have the staff and the more knowledge to sanitize and go through that stuff than we do as a city entity. Well, and this way our staff can focus on, making sure that everything else is running well. We've also talked to all of our artists who are coming and making sure they're comfortable with it and stuff like that.
Appreciate it. Great answer. Good suggestions. Dean, do you have anything?
Yeah, a couple things here. First question, GP, is related to the use of masks. Do you think masks, for attendees, will that help some? I like your idea around the blanket being kind of your zone, but do you envision encouragement of masks or things of that nature?
Yeah, I would. So wearing two hats here. So for the Arts Alliance, the question we have for people is, are you going to require it? I think that's a decision. The decision to reopen, as we say in our guide, is first, are you technically allowed to open? Second, are you okay to open? Are you good to open? At that point, those are the only, after that, then you can open. But if the answer to either of those is no, you shouldn't reopen. That's kind of the only, I would say, strict guidance we have provided, not required, but provided. We also, all of the individual things are really up to each individual business and each individual entity, unless a governing body were to require it somewhere else. We're not a governing body. So our questions, I will say, in the guide though, they don't say, why aren't you? They say, will you require masks to be worn? But it also says, what will you do if somebody refuses to abide by what you do? You have to have a plan for that as well. Wearing my city hat, we will encourage for those things probably to maintain social distancing. Wear a mask if we wear a mask, we can encourage that. I don't know if we're at a place where we are going to. I'll leave this up to the special events team and our police chief and city administrator who's on here, so I have to be careful what I say, I guess. But that we may not require it, because that just runs into, we were typically, the way we've approached it, and I assume other communities have as well, if there is a problem, we will address it immediately. But we're not going to walk around measure with a measuring stick and seeing if that 6 foot is exactly 6 feet, or making sure that is your mask the right mask, or that you have one but this person doesn't. That just gets into, I don't think any of us have gotten good guidance on how to equitably enforce this across our populations. Sure. And so I guess that doesn't really satisfy the answer, but it is something that I think every individual group should consider, and be sure that, I think the important piece there is messaging it and communicating it ahead of time, and setting the bar for expectations and leading by example, making sure that, if you're going to encourage it, make sure that your staff is doing it. And so that at least everything that you can control, because the biggest question out there that I'm sure every business is interested in, and we're interested in, just like every other business, is the liability piece. And if someone were to catch it at your event that's the ball game, at least in the PR realm. So I had someone from Horry County email me that yesterday asking me for advice on how to word something. I said, I'm not going to talk to a lawyer, insurance broker, but I will say, as long as if you are living by by living by the guidelines and doing everything you can, that's probably the best best position you're going to be in. So at the very least, for organizations who are putting on events, the best advice is do what the guidelines say without exception, and hold your staff to a high standard, so that it not only are you being safe for your staff and your audience, but also you're setting expectations for your audience visually, and you're leading by example. So that's sort of what I've come across.
Great. We've got another question from Pam Christopher from the Anderson Chamber, which I think is a good one, and it kind of ties to what you just talked about related to litigation. Your organization, are there concerns with, with having opening guidelines, and Jennifer Evans has, chimed in that they're going to be reopening the Chapman Cultural Center and some of their facilities soon, and they have guidelines. But if you are offering this, do you have concerns that you could be, your organization could be sued as, part of litigations as it relates to, you gave guidelines and maybe they weren't followed, or people didn't do whatever, but that you've gone out on a limb kind of to publicly give some guidelines? Or do you have concerns about that element?
For our organization, the way we framed it, we did it on purpose. They are just a series of guiding questions. There are no answers provided, and there is a lean towards safety, but there is not an explicit, if you're not doing this, you're wrong. There's not a follow-up question that's like, if not, why? So there are blanket questions that match up with a lot of the guidance that's in CDC, DHEC, FDA, as well as other states that have explicitly created arts and culture sections in their reopening plan. We reference some of those. There's a great reference on there for anyone who does events. Terrence, this may give better answer to your first question. From the Event Safety Alliance, we have a link in the guide itself. That one is a little bit more prescriptive, and we find that one to be a really great resource for things that I didn't even think about, things you needed to consider doing. That one's a little bit more directive, but it's not a government mandated thing.
So last thing here, GP, we have really a good question from Jeff Field that probably will take more than we have the time to get into. But say your event, you do temperature checks or whatever, and then you have someone with a fever or things of that nature. What is your follow-up or your follow-through? Are you going to help? Do you make sure they go get tested, or what? Obviously, y'all can't do it so much, but what is your plan if you have an event and there are people with a fever or things of that nature? Have you included that in your guidelines? And what would be your suggestion for an organization that is then going to try to implement some kind of a guideline?
The guideline, the book we have, the official document we have is not exhaustive. I don't think it covers that specific question. I think that's a great one though, to think about is, what do you do if someone, actually we do have it. What happens if someone becomes symptomatic or shows up symptomatic? Again, that was the extent of the question I think we put in there. We did not want to step into a medical field at all. So it's pretty much, you just have to, our advice essentially to every arts organization is make sure you think about all of this before you open your door, and ideally have an answer to it that you're okay sticking by. And I could answer the other Jeff's question about virtual performances. Yes, that a lot of arts organizations have pivoted to virtual performances streamed online. The problem we're seeing is it's extremely hard to monetize those. And so it's not necessarily going to save an arts organization from from a financial ruin, but it does help with exposure. And that was a part of our marketing training that we had. Was it's important to do those things though as well for access and everything.
Well, GP, thank you very much. And as you said, you know, arts and culture is one of those things I think all of us have missed in a lot of ways. And I think we don't realize how significant they are until they're not there, or at least not in the ways that we're used to. And so, you know, obviously we, through our Upstate Vive initiative and others, want to do everything we can to support our arts and culture organizations in the upstate. So thank you for that overview. And I'm sure as we continue throughout the summer, you know, looking at how to support efforts around getting back to the new normal or whatever it's going to be, arts and culture and supporting, you know, our arts organizations in the upstate will be an important component of that.
Thank you for having us. And, you know, I'll put my email in the chat in case anyone has anything they want to shoot me.
Thank you, GP. Thank you for your service. Appreciate you.
All right,
Dean?
Terrence, I've got a couple more questions to ask before we move on. The first one, we know we have a lot of people who are part of this who are on a committee or a task force that's looking at recovery within your community or your area. So we just wanted to get kind of an idea of how many folks who are part of this are involved in something of that kind. And as you can tell, and I'm not surprised, well, I don't think you can see the results yet, but it is not a surprise. A large number of folks are on a committee or a task force. So if you'll take a minute and keep answering those, we've got a few more folks to reply. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the results for this one, 62% are on some kind of a committee or a task force and 38% not. So for those who are, thank you for being engaged in that realm in some manner. As we've said, anything we can do to support you, we appreciate. I think it's a good it illustrates we've got many communities and organizations across the upstate making sure that we're working collaboratively around this issue. And I think it speaks volumes to the fact that everyone recognizes they cannot do this by themselves. So thank you for that. I've got one more question that I'm going to pose, and this is related, and GP talked a little bit about it, and it gets to comfort of people around being it in person. And I've got group meetings, but really group settings of any kind. Obviously, we do a lot of in-person meetings. So to us, it's important to know kind of where people are thinking at this point. And I think it'll be helpful as we look at, you know, other things like arts and sports and other kind of programs. Kind of what is your personal, you know, feeling about being in a group setting, knowing that they will all be, you know, doing everything they can to keep things safe. Okay. Great. So very interesting on this one. We've got a 24% that would be on the what I would call the not comfortable level. Then another 24% in the middle, and then over 50%, which is maybe a little more than I would have thought, who are generally comfortable with being in these settings. So that's a good, I think, a good indication that, you know, as long as we're smart and careful, I think we will certainly all try to re-engage and start getting back to some in-person collaboration and events and meetings. And for the arts organizations, GP and Jennifer and others, you know, that certainly I think has to be seen positively, I think, from your realm as well. So all of these results we will share with you and have on our website, but wanted to get just some insight from everyone. So I really appreciate your feedback on those. The last thing I'm going to report before I turn it over to Sharon for the county reports is we have been doing started our county listening tours. We've done 3 of them now. Many of you have been involved in those. I see some folks who were part of our Lawrence session earlier today. We've also done Greenwood and Cherokee, and they have been really very positive in terms of getting an understanding of what's going on in the communities across the upstate. And we have 4 more next week. Sharon is going to share with everyone the registration information for those. You're welcome to attend any of them that is of interest to you, your county, or others. And one of the purposes is to understand what communities are doing. So then as we look at the entire region, what are some of those things that we can work collaboratively to impact or grow our capacity? The last thing I want to mention is, and it is one of these events that is similar to some of the larger events that GP mentioned. Our regional summit was scheduled for the 23rd of September. When you read in our newsletter on Monday that we have postponed it, please act surprised. But we are going to move that event to May 5th of 2021. We're still going to have Richard Florida as our keynote, so we're pleased with that. But we felt like it was just the right thing to do from a safety and a community standpoint. So we still are right now still planning on having the Peak Young Professionals event in September and our Celebrating Successes luncheon in November. Obviously, we'll see how things are in the next couple of months, but did want to let you know that we will be moving the summit till 2021. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon to introduce our county updates.
Hi, I'm unmuted. Okay, good. Okay, so we have, first of all, I want to tell you I got halfway through putting links to the registration for the upcoming listening tour dates, and I'll get the others as folks are talking. Also, if you'll scroll back up in the chat, I also put links to the articles that were in this week's newsletter that are arts focused, and thought you might be interested in those. So let me get my list here, sorry. To start us out, representing Abbeville and Greenwood counties, we have Ben Calhoun from the Small Business Development Center. So Ben.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. I just want to start off by saying I'm a little jealous of GP's introduction there. So I might should have sent something over to Terrence that I'm not sure if I would check all those boxes that he did of being good looking and young and energetic, but I won't do my best to play my part here. But the other thing I'd like to do is just thank Sharon, thank you and Dean and Terrence and Aaron and all the efforts that y'all put together to get us together to have these types of discussions. If you don't know, our office actually serves 6 different counties. So anytime we have a chance to get everybody in the same room or same virtual room, it just really adds value to what we're trying to get accomplished. So thank you guys for taking the time to put this together. You know, I kind of jokingly have thought of ourselves as a traveling band here lately. All these people that we're going on these virtual meetings with and we see every day. So thank you guys for taking the time to do it. Sharon, I was a little bit intimidated at first when you asked me to represent Greenwood and Abbeville counties, but I'm going to do my best here. I think just this experience kind of speaks to the power and the value of collaboration, you know, because any question that I had about updates, you know, just through these meetings that we're having and having the connection to resources that I can ask the questions and make sure that what I present to you today is not just through the lens of somebody that's only working through working with small businesses, because that's really what our main focus has been for the last several weeks since the end of March, has been helping these small businesses and some small nonprofits navigate all the CARES Act relief questions that are coming up regularly. But I was able to reach out to some contacts in Abbeville County. So I'll just give you a quick overview of what's going on there first, and then we'll transition to Greenwood. The story from Abbeville is probably similar to what a lot of you guys are seeing. I think initially the response in all the counties that we serve was, just let's figure out what the damage is, or what's going on, who's hurting, who needs help, and how do we get them to who they need to get get that particular type of help. Recently, I'd say over the last week or two, our office has started to pivot to some of the things that GP already mentioned, the guides for reopening. We're trying to put some things together that will serve as a checklist, make sure that people and businesses are asking the questions that they need to ask before they reopen. And also just making sure that these task forces that are being put together in the different counties have everybody, I guess, on the list that needs to be included for feedback. And I'll say, just from my experience in Abbeville and Greenwood counties, those efforts are going very well. We've got a group of folks that are committed to working together, not only to help through this immediate crisis, but now I think that our biggest concern is how do we help prepare the businesses and the agencies that are counted on throughout these counties to make it through the long term, or come out on the other side of it whole. So that's what I think our focus has been, is just shifting there. I don't know that there's anything based on the feedback I've gotten that's unique to Abbeville or Greenwood counties. Some of these other calls that I've been on and some of the other webinars I've been a part of, sounds like everybody has the same idea of, let's work together, figure out what the needs are, and make sure that we're able to connect folks to the resources that they need. So Sharon, that's really just an overview of what's going on in those two counties. Again, thank you for taking the time to get people together with those listening tours. We've got Abbeville coming up soon. So that will be my third 10 at the top county that's representing those listening tours, and just kind of anxious to hear what everybody else is doing and maybe come up with some best practices that we can share throughout this group.
All right, thanks, Ben. I appreciate you sharing for both of those counties. That's really great information. And if you will put in maybe if you have a web link that you'd like to put in the comments for people to check out, that'd be great. Next, we have, for Anderson County, we have Pam Christopher, who is the president of the Anderson Area Chamber of Commerce. So I'm sure she has lots of great information to share from Anderson. I'll unmute you. Whoops.
There we go.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? There you go.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm glad to be with you today. And GP, I want to make sure you know that was not to put you on the spot earlier. A lot of us are worrying about what we're going to do with the litigation. And that's a big thing with Chambers of Commerce, because some put some packages out on what you should do and trying to stage people in. And then we were kind of told from the federal level and state level, you may not want to do that, because then you're putting your organization in harm way with litigation. So it's unfortunate whether we're in a sue happy world, but that's where we live, unfortunately. So I want to kind of go over a few updates, and Ben, some of this will be attributed to you too in a little bit. Anderson County K through 12 school system, the districts are still serving meals and will be transitioning to summer feeding programs soon. And this is supplemented by the nonprofits in our town. They're still working through what next year may look like. They're doing that through the state level and with Accelerate SC. And the districts are all graduating soon, but I'm sure you've all heard they're trying to determine on how the classrooms will look. Will they have like a group A for the students and a group B? Will they go on different days? Because they're going to have to put them 6 feet apart. So instead of those desks being side by side, they're going to have to be 6 feet apart. So it's going to be very interesting for the students, for the teachers, and I'm sure for the parents and all the faculty. So they're just trying to determine what's best practices now. United Way of Anderson County, they're continuing to make food and funds available for agencies. They're beginning to look forward to funds for rent and utilities. And this is important in their efforts to keep people safely in their homes. Anderson County, I'm glad to report, has had 27 days with no COVID-related deaths. So we're doing well, and really want to do a big shout out to all of our governments, agencies, city, towns, our county as well as all of our first responders and ANMED. They're just doing a great job, and we appreciate everything they're doing for all of us. Anderson University is going to be coming back. You probably saw that with in-person classes beginning August 19th. Tri-County Tech is looking like they're going to come around that time too with theirs. They both will still be offering some classes, I think, coming through this, and we've all done virtual. They've had some classes and some opportunities to maybe continue some things virtually, but they will begin their in-person classes, both of them. Payroll protection program, want to kind of let you know a little bit about that. They still have $125 billion still left to fund. And I want to thank Rick Atkins from Congressman Jeff Duncan's office. I see Jordan on there. And also we got some of these figures I'm going to share in a minute from Ben Calhoun through Rick Atkins. So I want to let you know that. Originally, when funded through the PPP program, businesses were to begin bringing their furloughed employees back on staff with the understanding that they needed to get to the number of at least 10 on staff by June 30th. Now that has been extended to December 31st. And instead of being fully back to pre-COVID staff numbers within 2 years, now they have extended that to 5 years. They understand that some of the staff furloughed, they've realized that may not be coming back to those places of work with their previous employers, which will take a longer time frame for those businesses to get back to their previous employment counts. So that's a big consideration now. Want to also kind of go and let you know some of the stuff. This is the things that I got from Rick, but he got through Ben Calhoun. So I want to do a nice shout out to him. On the EIDL loans, as of April 24th, there were 448 processed. From April 25th to May 22nd, there were 4,906 with a total then of 5,352. The loans, dollar loans processed as of April 24th were 87,427,800, and processed April 25th through May 22nd was 351,518,000. So the total there with those two areas of time frame are 438,945,800. The average loan that was given during that time was $82,015. On the EIDL Advance program, that's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. I know we all do this by abbreviations. As of April 24th, 15,613 were processed. From April 25th to May 8th, 24,692 for the state of South Carolina, with a total of 40,305. The dollar advances as of April 24th was 64,119,000, and processed from April 25th to May 8th were 67,460,000. So for a total of 131,747,000, with an average receipt of 3,269. So I thought that was great information to kind of share with you guys. Wanted to also let you know that I'm excited. It's not our county, but our neighboring county. But we've been working on those efforts. Chairman Senator Thomas Alexander out of Oconee announced that he's creating a new safe harbor committee to consider liability protection legislation as advocated by the Upstate Chamber Coalition. And the Upstate Chamber Coalition is Jason Zacher that is out of the Greenville Chamber. I don't know if you realize, but our upstate chambers through the 10 counties actually fund Jason's position. So he works on all of our behalf. So that's been an area that we wanted to make sure that we had some protection for our business community. So the South Carolina Chamber has also been a partner of that. And other organizations that were partners have been the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance, South Carolina Hospital Association, the South Carolina Medical Association, and the South Carolina Retail Association. So okay. Appreciate that.
Pam, that is great information. I need to get to the other counties before the hour is up. But that is a lot.
I'll send you the other stuff that you can send out.
Yeah. That is really great information. Thanks so much. Yeah, if you can put some links in the chat, people would be really interested in hearing.
Will do.
Want to move on to, we've got 3 counties at one time, this time with Hannah Jarrett from the United Way of the Piedmont. She is going to be covering Cherokee, Union counties, and Spartanburg County. So Hannah.
Hi, everyone. I'm with United Way of the Piedmont, and we serve Spartanburg, Cherokee, and Union counties. Of course, my neighbor just started mowing his lawn as soon as I had to unmute, so I apologize if y'all can hear that. I'm just going to share a quick update about the financial assistance that we've provided across our 3 counties through the United for All Fund for people who have lost wages due to COVID-19. And I'm just going to I was going to share my screen, but it looks like that's disabled, and that's fine. I will just share that over 600, probably at this point over 700 people have reached out through 211 in our 3 counties seeking assistance due to how COVID-19 has impacted them. The majority of those households have been, I guess, new to, you would call it new to the safety net system, meaning that they've never asked for or needed assistance before because they were stable in their jobs prior to COVID-19. Of those people who've reached out, we have provided financial assistance to almost 400 households across our 3 counties, primarily in Spartanburg County. And that's simply because with the majority of people who've reached out have been in Spartanburg County. We've had a fair amount of people in Cherokee County reach out and provided a good amount of assistance in that community. Union County, we've struggled to hear from people. You know, we hope that that means that there's maybe not as many people in Union who are impacted by this pandemic. However, realistically, we know that that's likely not true. And so we've been trying to be creative on how we can get the word out to people about the services and assistance that's available to them. We've made sure that we were on the radio, we were in the newspaper. We've reached out to a lot of the community organizations, including the library and a couple of nonprofits in that community, to make sure that they have all the information to share with people. So that is a little bit of a challenge that we just want to make sure that folks who perhaps are struggling in Union County know that there are resources available to them. Primarily, we've provided financial assistance in the area of rent, mortgage, utilities, motel stays, and then transportation related costs in order for people to make their car payments and their car insurance and things like that. So we have been very grateful to be able to provide that assistance across Spartanburg, Cherokee, and Union counties. Unfortunately, though, at this time in Spartanburg and Cherokee counties, this is likely our last week of assistance that we will be able to provide to families in those communities through the United for All Fund because funding is running out. We still have funding available in Union County. Folks can still, we still encourage people if they have been impacted and lost wages due to COVID-19 to call 211 or go to sc211.org. Because even though we don't have financial assistance, I know there are a lot of other organizations that still do have funding available. In fact, the EFSP CARES Act funding was just dispersed to nonprofit organizations that applied for that. And I know across our 3 counties, there were several organizations that received that funding, and it's now available for families. So while we don't, at United Way, don't necessarily have funding left beyond this week, for a lot of families in our community, there are a lot of other resources. So please still encourage people to call 211. I'll just share 2 or 3 other brief updates for our community. One is that the Chamber of Commerce for Spartanburg recently shared in a conversation with me and some other community partners that, you know, we have, of course, like every community, seen a very significant rise in unemployment over the past 9 or 10 weeks. However, you know, we're grateful that 70 to 80% of those individuals are still tethered to their jobs. And so we'll likely have the opportunity to return back to those jobs as companies reopen. You know, we're seeing a lot of companies start to have partial schedules, you know, you work 1 week off the next week, that type of thing. So that's very encouraging. We also know that the $600 additional funding that's been attached to unemployment insurance will end July 31st. And we think that that will present a whole nother set of challenges as people try to overcome having that additional payment that for a lot of folks was more than what they were making and their salaries at their jobs. So we are anticipating that and thinking about how we can, as a community, help people transition back into employment. successfully. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions through the chat, and thank you all for everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Now we will move on to Greenville County, and we have with us today Brandy Amadon, who is the mayor of Travelers Rest. I do want to make sure that we have represented some of the other towns that are not the main towns that you think of. So I'm happy to have Brandy with us today.
Great, thanks, Sharon. Yeah, Sharon assured me that I didn't have to represent the entire Greenville County, just Travelers Rest. So appreciate everyone on the call today, and it's so nice to see so many familiar faces. I thought I would just give some hodgepodge updates on Travelers Rest and things that are kind of top of mind for us here in TR. Excuse me, of course someone calls. First of all, budget, which is one of the biggest pieces of local government. We started working on our budget about a month ago, and the first draft was a little doom and gloom, and so it was a little intense on thinking of worst case scenarios, and then we were able to spend some time looking at that. And really 2 weeks later, we've got some additional numbers, and we're able to make that a little bit more reasonable. And so we have a cautiously optimistic budget for this coming year. And part of our budget process, our city administrator reached out to other local municipalities in Greenville County, and really they run the gamut of what we're kind of predicting for this upcoming fiscal year. For us, we're going to look at our budget at 3 months, and there's so much this unknown day to day, and so we want to be nimble and able to move and make decisions with good, smart data. So we'll look at that again in 3 months and 6 months. We're also working on placemaking options for Travelers Rest. It's always been a focus of ours here in TR, but knowing that people might feel more comfortable eating outdoors for the long haul. So we're trying to make more pocket parks and outdoor seating, and take some parking space, sort of similar to what the city of Greenville is doing as well. A big part of our summer is usually concerts and events at Trailblazer Park. And so a lot of that has been postponed. We put off our June and July events, city-sponsored events. The farmers market did reopen, which is a huge part of our identity in Travelers Rest as well. And they did a great job of putting a lot of the safety measures in place that GP mentioned. And so it's been a really good event for people to come back out, be outside, but also maintain some of the social distancing pieces. A little bit about our businesses. They're, for the most part, doing well. I think our restaurants and retail, of course, on a local and small business level are hurting the most. And so I really only know of 1 or 2 businesses that either might not come back or might not come back in the same form as they were before COVID-19. And so we're definitely doing our best to support them. We had some local campaigns to encourage takeout and, just be smart about trying to get people to stay local and shop at some of those businesses. Some's closed down for a month or so, and then they've reopened, and so that's good news for us as well. And then lastly, just thinking about from a government standpoint, our capital budgets. And so we felt it was important to continue the momentum that we have here in TR. As you guys know, we've just, in the last 5 or 6 years gone from a little more in the back row to the front row and trendy. And so we want to make sure that we continue that. And so we've got some plans for capital improvements to Poinsett Highway, which is kind of our natural extension of Main Street. And so we're moving on that. We've got a crosswalk plan, a roundabout plan. And so we're not holding back on any of those. We've just been smart about our funds and our budgets, but want to make sure we continue that momentum so we don't get held back. I think that was one of the lessons we learned in the recession. That was part of the timing where we had the trail coming through and our Main Street redevelopment plans. And so we definitely want to make sure we keep going in a positive direction. So yeah, there's a little TR update for you. Thanks, Sharon, for inviting us.
Thank you, Brandy. Next from Lawrence County, we have Jonathan Irick, who has been on, this is his second meeting with us today. So thanks for joining us again, Jonathan. He's going to talk, he's from Main Street Lawrence, and he's going to tell us about what's going on with their small businesses there.
Thank you, Sharon. I'll kind of go quickly through this. So post-COVID, most of our businesses in downtown have opened back up. I don't know of any right now that are not going to open back up or that we're going to lose permanently. We did have several, that closed down and have come back slowly, but I think as of today, I think everything is open back up. Obviously, they've got the restrictions in place and they're taking all the precautions, but I think everybody in downtown is open back. We do have a couple of things that we're doing to help from the Main Street perspective. We were awarded a Grills grant through the National Main Street Program, which is, we were one of 8 communities across the country. We're going to use that as a technology audit, updating kind of thing for our businesses, where we'll bring in some experts on marketing, online work. We're going to have a self-assessment for the businesses, and then we'll work with them after that to try to get them maybe up with a website or e-commerce, whatever the best way is that they can utilize those funds. Our board approved $15,000. We reallocated some facade grants to go to a utility grant. So we'll be working on application for that for our member businesses. We should be able to do, I think 20 businesses should get $750 each to help with their utilities for the next month or so. That'll be a good help for them. We also, talking about the events, GP had shared sort of their draft version of the Arts Alliance form with us, and we're working with the South Carolina Festival and Events Association to come up with some guidelines for events in the state, where we've got folks from the state fair, from the Main Street communities, and a couple other groups that are working on this. So that should be, we hope that'll be out by next week. Here locally, we won one of the community vibrancy grants, and so we did have to cancel that event, unfortunately, for this year. So we will have the inaugural Blues and Roots Music Festival next year, next May. It's designed to be a spring event, and we wanted to make sure that we did it right, since it was going to be the first year. We didn't want to try to cobble some stuff together to do the event. So we're going to be doing that next year. The city of Clinton, their downtown is moved their Rhythm on the Rails, which is an event they had scheduled for May. They've moved that to June 19th and 20th. And so they're moving forward with that event. And I would say one of the biggest things that we are looking for right now, or trying to figure out, is whether we're going and looking at our events, because our businesses are telling us what they need is cash and customers, obviously. And so from a Main Street perspective, we can help with the customers getting them downtown, but then that means special events. And so how do we do those? What form can we possibly do? We've been doing a lot of online marketing for shopping, through curbside. We did some curbside parking signs for the businesses. We promoted the takeout with the restaurants. We helped several develop actual gift cards for their businesses during the shutdown. So now we're trying to figure out how we can best get them open back up. We did partner with the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street Clinton to do a community survey. And that, you can kind of, we asked some questions about how quick would the community be ready to get back to the businesses. And we've got that we can share with anybody that would like those results. But one of the things in that was the highest was that having sanitizer available. And so that's one of the things we're having an issue with is trying to find those things so that we can provide them, so that we can do some type of event, or so that our businesses can have those. What we would like to do is be able to make a bulk purchase of the sanitizer machines so that we could offer those to the businesses. But right now we're having a hard time finding any of that. And that makes it difficult to move forward because you need some of those things in place. But for the most part, we're on the positive. We've got a new restaurant that should be opening in the next week or so. Some of our current restaurants took the time during COVID to do some rehab to the fronts of their buildings and the insides of their buildings, repainting, new tables and chairs, that sort of thing. And then we have a new project here on the square that's a total building rehab. And that should be wrapping up within the next probably month or so. So a lot of good things still happening here. We're just, again, being cautious with the funds and everything. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Annie Caggiano from Oconee, from Oconee Economic Alliance was on the call, and she had to jump off because something came up, but she said if I would like to share for her, the county is doing well, but still in recovery mode from the tornado. The donations to help those affected have totaled well over $500,000 dedicated to help families get back in their home. As far as economic development, we are back to pre-COVID levels of activity. Companies are starting to do their due diligence to new site facilities in the next 18 to 24 months. We take this as a very good sign for the economy. So that's a lot of really great news from Oconee. And last but not least is Jeremy Price from the United Way of Pickens County. And Jeremy, are you, let's unmute you there. Are you okay? Because you had mentioned that you were having some connection issues. Just want to make sure you're good to go.
Yeah, I think I'm good to go if you all can hear me.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. I had to get creative. It's been one heck of a week for technology. So anyway, real quick, I'm going to share some great updates from Pickens County with you. But here's what I want your takeaway to be. So regardless of what I share, please take this with you. We had people in Pickens County that were really close to the falling off of the financial stability cliff before COVID-19. This has pushed them over for sure. And on top of that, you add a tornado to it that affected a lot of people in the northern part of our county and certainly Oconee County. And so there are people out there hurting. And so we have tried to respond at United Way at Pickens County. We started our COVID-19 fund, and through the generous donations of businesses, churches, and individuals in Pickens County, we were able to raise over $100,000 that has been dispersed to local nonprofits in Pickens County, such as Meals on Wheels, where they were able to buy freezers, transport bags, coolers, warmer plates, additional supplies that they needed, as obviously they've seen a huge increase in the number of clients that they are serving. Also help out the Salvation Army, United Christian Ministries, just to name a few. So we are still continuing to help out those agencies through the COVID-19 fund. On top of that, we were able to raise over $25,000 for tornado relief specifically. And then we received $60,000 from the 1SC fund that again went to these local agencies that are serving on the front lines, helping these people out. And then, as Hannah mentioned, the Emergency Food and Shelter Program, or EFSP, is a federal grant, and they basically piggybacked phase 37 on top of the CARE funding. And that has brought over $80,000 to Pickens County that are going to these agencies to help with things like rent, utilities, food, and shelter for that. We have seen, I think it's important to notice that back in the middle of March, we saw a huge demand for food. And we have seen a transition, obviously, now from there's still people that need food, but there are higher needs for utilities and food, utilities and shelter. And Hannah mentioned the 211, the data from 211 really validates that. They're receiving more calls for utilities and rent, et cetera. So the great thing about Pickens County is we are a smaller county, but because we are smaller, we communicate well. Because we communicate well, we can act quickly, and we have acted quickly on these individuals that need rent and utility assistance. And also, as you all know, a problem that we're facing is broadband and access to internet. But the county itself has worked with the Pickens County Library System to offer some mobile hotspots that hopefully we are knocking away at that. Internally, as far as programs United Way at Pickens County is offering, and I'll wrap up with these two things. Number one, on March 16th, we had to shut down our free tax preparation service, VITA. That's Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. The host, the libraries, which is our host site, they shut down, so we had to shut down. And it resulted in us having to cancel 400 appointments for individuals needing tax assistance. I am excited and happy to announce that because of the extended date for taxes, the tax deadline being July 15th, we are going to have a drive-in tax preparation service, so where somebody can drive in, drop off their taxes to be prepared and come back and pick them up later. So hopefully we can help those people out. As you know, capturing those rebates, those refunds from taxes is really important to a lot of people. And that concludes my update on Pickens County. Really appreciate the time, Sharon, and thank you all.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Dean, are you there?
Terrence is going to wrap us up.
Terrence is going to wrap us up. Okay.
Thank you.
Back to you, Terrence.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Dean and your team for providing this forum. Thanks to all the speakers. Great information. We walk away from all of these saying this was the best one yet, and this was a very good one. So I appreciate everybody engaging. Keep going, keep your head down, and stay positive, and we'll see you on the other side of this thing. Thank you. Have a good weekend.